And now moving on to pick number 11, where the Knicks were, and basically nobody knew what the hell was going on. I know us Knicks fans are watching, saying, "What pick is going out? How many picks are we getting? Who are they coming from?" Now Kemba's getting traded and dumped, and are we picking 12? Are we picking 13? Even Woj and Shams didn't know what was going on. So as a non-Knicks observer, Glenn, the hell was going through your mind? Because Knicks fans were freaking out.
Yeah, and if Woj doesn't know what's going on, I don't think any of us do. Yeah, it was really confusing. It just made me think about the people who were at the draft because they don't really announce the trades, unlike the NFL draft. I'm sure they had no clue what was going on. But I know at one point in time, Jalen Duren, the center from Memphis, was heading to the Knicks. I was like, oh, wow. Like I'm a big fan of his. I was like, wow, like that's a great pickup for the Knicks. That means I guess they're not re-signing Mitch. But then it seems like they traded away everything. But I think the salary relief, like as much as it's kind of annoying, it does play a significant role. And then just having future picks. I know there's like, without getting into the nitty gritty of it, like protections do have a really important impact. And a lot of these are probably, even though they're for next year, the protections are going to push them down the line, but just additional picks help you move up and down in drafts. They help you trade. Like look at Jeremy Grant from the Blazers was like a late first round pick. So like getting a role player like that on an expiring contract, these can be used for. Like it's just nice to have like the flexibility of having draft picks, even if the protections are great or if they don't get conveyed for a couple of years. It's good to have. So I honestly don't think anyone on the board was someone that I was like the Knicks missed out on per se. Maybe AJ Griffin, the small forward from Duke, I think is a really good shooter and fell to 16 for Atlanta. But at the end of the day, like I think it was smart for conveying 1 first round pick and Kemba Walker and like 4 second rounders for 3 first rounders. So
Yeah. Yeah. And the initial takeaway is frustration for Knicks fans, right? Because draft nights this night you look forward to. You learn about all these players in the vicinity of your pick, and you're like, I would love this guy, wouldn't love that guy. And you walk away with nothing in that regard. And it's frustrating. But as I reminded people in my Instagram and TikTok video, like the draft is not supposed to be fun, like for a team specifically. It's not about having fun. It's about making your team better. And if you can accept that, you can try to look into the mind of the front office of the Knicks and you say, if they didn't love anybody at 11, kind of like you just mentioned, like Ousmane Dieng is a prospect I like. I don't like him for the Knicks. Like Jalen Williams is a prospect I like. You know, what's he doing for the Knicks? I'm not sure. So,
because when it was first announced, it was Ousmane Dieng to the Knicks, and I was like, weird fit. Like, I like him as a prospect, but for like OKC or the Spurs or teams that are like have this 5-year plus like development ability, which are like I feel like the Knicks are still obviously trying to contend for the playoffs. So again, I think at the end of the day, they made the right decision.
And even just with developing young players in general, outside of RJ Barrett, you know, and I guess you can count quickly now, and even Mitch, like that might be the first group of Knicks players who get re-signed from the draft since the late 90s. Like the Knicks don't re-sign draft picks because they haven't worked out. Like they just haven't at all, right? Even if they did a little bit, they traded them, whatnot. Mitch seems like the first guy to break that mold. RJ should do the same. But yeah, it was very, very weird. And the one frustrating thing for Knicks fans too was all this about just getting Jalen Brunson. And I think what we all realized, it can't be just about Jalen Brunson. There has to be other moves here. Otherwise, it's a failure. Because as much as we can like Jalen Brunson, which I think most people like him, we all understand that he's not a number one, that he's not going to change the course of a franchise by himself. He's more of a ceiling raiser or a floor raiser with like occasional ceiling type stuff, right? Like he can carry your team for 2 weeks when your best guy goes hurt, but you don't want him being the guy when it comes down to it. So he's really a floor raiser, which listen, the Knicks need a higher floor, but that can't be the whole story. However, Glenn, what is the story? What are the other opportunities there? This is kind of touching on the free agency stuff here too. But what the heck could be the other options to bring in with Jalen Brunson if that is a sure thing, as people say?
Yeah, which I didn't really realize all the connections he had to the organization, Leon Rose, his agent's Leon Rose's son, right? And I only just thought of this right now, Pete, so I'm actually going to fire it back to you of what you think, your take on this. But I think something I had been thinking about was DeAndre Ayton. I know a lot of people thought he would be a good fit for the Hornets, the Pistons, but they both drafted centers in the lottery, so it seems more likely that they're not going to go in that direction. But it looks like if the Knicks don't re-sign Mitch, that there's a little bit of a hole there. What is your thought on that?
I haven't thought of that one either. It depends on the number. So my take is if you can get Mitch at 15 million per or DeAndre Ayton at 25 plus per, I'm going Mitch and I'm sticking with Mitch. And I get why Phoenix didn't want to give DeAndre Ayton the max. And now I understand why Ayton fans and Ayton takes that as an insult and doesn't like that. If it wasn't the Suns, right? I think we all look at this a lot differently. Because the Suns are cheap and they have a terrible owner who might have to sell the team in a year if we're lucky. We all heard, oh, they won't give Ayton the max. It's the Suns' fault. They're blowing it again. However, if this was a different team, I think we'd say, yeah, do we really want to give Ayton $28 million a year when you need to give another max or two maxes out on your roster? that stresses me out a little bit, Glenn. I don't think I would want.
Let's go 16 for Mitch, 25 for Ayton.
I'm going with Mitch. I think that 10 million that you can save on a good center versus a very good center, right? I think Mitch is good. I think DeAndre Ayton is very good. I don't think he's elite in any regard. He's very good.
And I think more scoring than Mitch, more flexible scoring than Mitch.
And you could argue maybe even more flexible defending, though Mitch is a better interior defender. Ayton's a little bit more suited to stay out of foul trouble and guard the perimeter. But no, I'm saving the money. I'm sticking with Mitch. I don't want to tie up more money into Ayton. However, if it's Ayton and Brunson coming in, I think at least there's some structure and some progress there. It's just it wouldn't be on the top 3 of my hopes for their offseason. Is my take. That's my take.
Yeah. So
I don't know who else is out there. There's talks about DeJounte Murray, which I think are pie in the sky. I don't think that's legit. I think the Spurs want to keep him. Donovan Mitchell will be dangling out there. But if you're talking about a Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, RJ Barrett, 1, 2, 3 combo, it's good. It's much better than we got. And I think I would be very thrilled with that. However, I'm not convinced that's going to end up happening. I don't think we're going to end up with Donovan Mitchell after this offseason. As much as I've tried to talk myself into it and all that, I don't see it happening. And I don't love 2 smaller guards and RJ Barrett taking the lead of the entire backcourt.
Agreed. I don't have as deep of a Knicks take on that one. So
that's fine. That's fine. So I don't know what they're going to do. All right, let's do a couple more picks here, and then we'll get into some free agency thoughts in general as we get closer and closer. We're going to talk about your Celtics as well as some other free agents. But throughout, you already mentioned you like Jalen Duren. Some other picks here: Mark Williams, AJ Griffin. The big one that kind of shocked people: Jake LaRavia out of Wake Forest. Any of those specifically jump out to mind, or is there anything else that you want to jump into in that 15 through 30 range?
Yeah, I guess backtracking a little bit. I know I've mentioned Jalen Duren a lot, but something that I think of a comp for him is, well, first of all, like if this was 2004, he's like literally Dwight Howard. He's a bulky in a muscular way, big man who can jump out of the gym, block, catch lobs, everything. But guess who else did that exclusively in college and now is doing phenomenal on the Miami Heat?
Bam Adebayo. Wow.
So I think teams aren't dumb. They aren't drafting a big these days unless they're just getting I don't know. I think Mark Williams is a little bit different of he's kind of more not exactly like Mitch Robinson, but it's like, oh, you're gonna rebound, block shots, catch lobs.
Rim run, block shots.
But ones that are a little bit more mobile, like Jalen Duren, literally reminds me of Bam coming out of school. And if the Hornets, or not the Hornets, the Pistons are smart, they should try to do whatever the hell the Miami Heat did, which obviously totally different organizations. The Heat are great at developing players, but get the ball in his hands in other ways, let him really utilize his abilities and maximize his potential. And what was it, 3 years ago, Bam Adebayo had 5 assists a game.
Right.
As a center.
Yeah.
Because dribble handoffs, kicking out to shooters. I really think Jalen Duren has that potential to be similar to Bam, which at the end of the day, like there's a lot of conversation of like, is Bam a max player? That's not even the argument I'm getting into. I think he is. You kind of saw that he was still very young in the playoffs, especially against Celtics, but like that's who Jalen Duren reminds me of a lot. Touched on the other two, Mark Williams, AJ Griffin, I think will be great. Jake LaRevia, who you mentioned, I really didn't watch that much about him, and I only just saw him like jutting up draft boards in the last like couple weeks, which I found out why today, actually, Pete. It was like misinformation out there about his age. He was listed as 22 in a lot of places, and his agent actually like he's 20, which can scare people off a little bit. So they literally had to like go around like formally correcting like online publications, like making sure the teams were aware, because he was actually at Wake for 1 year. I think he was like at Minnesota State or something, like a much smaller school. I really do like Christian Braun, the shooting guard out of Kansas. His block rate for a guard was like actually really good. I think he averaged almost 1.5 blocks as a shooting guard. Can like hopefully get more consistent with his 3-point shot, but like has a really good stroke. I think Walker Kessler for Minnesota will be a good role player, just like blocking shots. But you want to hear the scary one, I think, that I was talking with my buddies with this weekend, because my buddy who was visiting from Boston, like he does a lot of filming for high school AAU and some of the different circuits. So it was a really in-depth with like top high school recruits, which I like pay attention to that as well. Patrick Baldwin Jr. He was a top 10 recruit. I thought he should have went back to school. He's out of Milwaukee. He had an offer for Duke, but his dad became a coach at Milwaukee, and that's where he's from. So he stayed, had a pretty bad season with injuries. I think he only played like 10 or 12 games. He shot really bad, both from the field and from 3-point percentage. I was like, this is the type of dude that should have gone back to school or transferred. His dad did get fired from Milwaukee, but yeah, I think he's in the one, like me and my buddy were talking about, he's like in the one place that I'm like, oh shoot,
it could work.
Of course.
It could work.
Yeah. And he's going to Golden State. He can take his time. He's going to be surrounded by phenomenal shooters, phenomenal like organization. Like watch out for that one.
Yeah. And it's interesting because he probably won't get much time this year. Think about it. They have 2 rookies who were scratching at the lineup in Kuminga and Moody, who will likely get more next year, especially if they don't bring back Otto Porter, which, we'll see what happens with that. This is a guy, though, that can in 3 years become a rotation guy for them and has the skill set to be a dude.
Not going to be rushed at all.
And it shouldn't be, because he clearly didn't have it. I love the pick, too. I actually I wagered a small amount on him to be a first-round pick. He was plus 200 to be a first-round pick, and I snagged that one up, thankfully. Was my one of 2 wins on my draft bets. I actually did I was listening to the radio while walking my dog, and I heard my Wojcification go off my watch, and I'm looking at it. So Paolo in play for number 1 pick, and I went on my phone real quick. I saw the odds go from 500 to 350 to 200 in like 10 seconds. Like, but I put something on him at 200 as well. So that was another hit. But the Patrick Baldwin thing is very interesting. It's, again, if he
went to like a team that was like bad and wanted him to play Houston, right away,
Houston was
I think
29.
he would have been out of the league in a couple years.
Yeah, Houston's at 29, just to put because they're next to each other. If he goes to Houston, you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Maybe. But no, now he's in Golden State and you expect something. You really do. Onto another guy who I like, and I've been on him since way before the draft. I remember going into the tournament. I'm watching as many Duke highlights as I can to really watch Paolo. And I keep saying, who is this guy, Wendell Moore? I love this guy. I love how he moves the ball. I like his shooting stroke. I like his versatility. He looks like a big 6'5". Like, he don't look like a small, like he looks like a wing, but he's only 6'5". Love him, and putting him in Minnesota where he can be a glue guy around Anthony Edwards and even the Jared Vanderbilts of the world. Like, just another guy who knows what to do, who moves the ball, who can shoot. I'm a big Wendell Moore Jr. fan. I was upset.
Did you really? Was the second Timberwolves that came to mind really
Jared Vanderbilt.
Jared Vanderbilt.
Well, I'm thinking of the guys who play forward, who play in the middle. Obviously you got D'Angelo Russell and Cat, but he's not a point guard, Wendell Moore, and he's not.
He was listed as a small forward, but he's like a 2 guard. He's a
wing. He's a wing.
Yeah.
A smaller wing, I guess, but
he had a pretty good assist numbers too. Like
he had very good assist numbers, very good for a college player. And that's what I'm saying. I loved how he moved the ball. I'm watching Paolo highlights. I'm like, who's this guy? He's doing all the right things. He's very active. I love his defense. And I think he could fit really well into Minnesota. I can see him being a first-year rotation guy who makes an impact on a decent team.
Helps spending 3 years in a Duke system. Like,
doesn't hurt. And usually that scares people away. Maybe that did. Maybe that's why he fell off a little bit. But nonetheless, I'm kind of fine.
And my last person that I have to shout out, who actually plays very similar to Wendell Moore, who was not expected to be drafted, but UConn had a player, my alumnus, Therese Martin. He played 2 years at Rhode Island, and then transferred to UConn when Danny Hurley came over. And I forget who mentioned this, but I now can't stop thinking about it. Josh Hart.
Heavy Josh Hart.
Both 4 years players, both 6'5", 6'6" for guard, like phenomenal rebounding numbers. I know, like, Josh Hart gets a lot of double doubles with rebounds. Same thing with Martin, can kind of guard 1 through 4. He got invited to some regional draft camp or something, and just like lit it up. And I was, someone was like, picture Josh Hart. And now I can't not see it.
Better or worse than other UConn alum, James Bouknight?
It's only a second year, so.
Oh, I know you were a fan and I wasn't, so I had to pick that one. I had to pull that out. Yeah, tough year.
We'll have the conversation next year.
Okay,
I still stand by it, Pete. His handle is still like
he's shifty.
Top in the league. Yeah,
he's shifty. All right,
not the top in the league, but like
top. I get it.
Top echelon.
I get it. No, let's do 1 or 2 more picks here. I have a thought on Gabrielle Persida, the Italian man who got drafted by Portland. Everyone can easily see him.
You're gonna have to tell me about him. Actually,
you're gonna have to say Mario Hezonja 2.0. It's gonna be terrible. But this dude is an athlete. He can play. He can shoot. Gabrielle Persida, bro, watch out. He's a pretty big shooting guard. And I think he's one of those Euros who flew under the radar and can come in and just actually have an impact on an NBA level, because he does everything on offense. He can shoot. He can drive. He can move the ball. And Mario Hezonja was all flash.
He used to be able to do that too.
Was he ever able to?
When he was in Europe before he came over.
That is correct. So it's a second round pick, Gabrielle Persida.
There's a lot of draft stashes, I feel like, this year in the second round compared to the last couple of years.
It goes back to your point of this draft not being as deep as last year. Last year, you and I were looking at this and saying, yo, the 20s, the 30s, there are players here.
Yeah.
And look at the Knicks alone, Quentin Grimes and Miles McBride. Those are NBA players, like 100%. And there are other guys who are in that same realm from last year, who are going to be in that same exact ilk. So I love it. I think it's a good draft. It wasn't the most exciting draft of all time, but it was a decent one. And also got to
When was the last time we didn't know who the first overall pick was going to be until
moments
got up there? Yeah,
it's a great point. I do have to
mention Vegas knew.
True. I do have to mention Trevor Keels. Any takes on Trevor Keels at a Duke? You know, the Knicks pick in the second round?
Yeah, like I watched a fair amount of Duke games, and like I did like him. I don't know if like, you can say like he's very thick for a guard, but like
thick boy.
I don't know. When I just saw him play, it wasn't like screaming NBA style, but like, do you remember Wayne Sheldon out of Kansas from like 8 years ago? Reminds me of him, like, because everyone was like, he's 6'5" and like 230, and he can guard wings and not get bullied around as like a guard who also can guard guards. I just said guard 3 times in a sentence, but it reminds me of that. Not necessarily in style of plays, but just like big body for a guard wing that like,
right.
I thought Wayne Sheldon was going to do fine, but
Yeah, and Trevor Keels definitely likes to get his jumpers up, but he's not really a 3-point shooter, which just makes me nervous. I'm not super thrilled about Trevor Keels pick.
But
That's
development is so important. It's not something we can predict. Like, who would have thought, going back to my Celtics, Grant Williams would be such a high role player in the league. Like, who would have thought Gary Trent would get where he is now? I don't know. Like, just as another Duke guard, as we talked about Trevor Keels. Yeah, sure. Like, you can't always predict development. So
it's a great point. It really is. And he has a shot. It's just, will it become an NBA shot? That's the question. So that's a good segue by you, though, to go on to the Boston Celtics and then on to free agency in general. The Celtics just made the finals. Congratulations, by the way. I'm sure it was a great time for you. Those very stressful, I'm sure, throughout the entire playoffs as well. Even the first round sweep was stressful for the Celtics this year. But what a year. You made the finals. Didn't end up how you wanted, obviously. But now we hit this point where we're up to free agency. They didn't really have any draft capital. So what's next? How does this team get better? What can they do? What is your key position of target?
Well, I guess first thing to start off too, yes, it was an absolute roller coaster with the game sevens we had to get through against the Bucks and the Heat. And it was, I just looked back because it was so funny, because going into the Brooklyn series, people were like, all right, Brooklyn as winning in the playing games, it's like, all right, they're kind of back and like they're an elite super team. And like the first two games, I'm pretty sure the Nets were favored. I don't know in a betting perspective, but just like kind of in a crowd sourced sort of way. Then like after the Celtics like beat them in 2 games, maybe 3 games, like the rest of the playoffs until the finals, the Celtics were like the favorite, which was just kind of crazy how the turntables turned. According to the legend Michael Scott. But no, going forward, like Celtics are in great position, I think. Not necessarily to win a finals, because I think both the East and the West, like, not that it was easy to get through it, but I just think any of these teams that were in the playoffs this year, like, are going to can be contenders next year. Like,
right,
the Heat will be bad. Like, will be good. The Bucks will always be good. The Sixers will be good. The Nets will probably be better next year. In the West, the Lakers will certainly be back. The Clippers are going to be healthy. Like, the Mavericks got even better with the Christian Wood trade. Like,
the Nuggets get healthy.
Yeah, like there's so many teams that, for one reason or another this year, like, it just wasn't their year. But like all the teams that we just mentioned can contend. So like that's why I don't have the biggest faith in the world. It's not a knock on the Celtics, right. But I love Basketball Reference. I think you and I have talked about their like payroll thing where it shows all the years players have left, and Celtics have every single one of their players coming back next year, of course, other than some like the bottom of the bench people. But every single player is coming back, so they're going to be in good position. And I just don't think they need to do much. Like, I'm sure we're not going to continue the second half of the season number 1 seed, one of the best teams in the league records that we had the second half of the season next year. Just again, for what we said, the league's going to be really competitive again next year. But I just don't think, like, it took us a while to kind of get here with like the talks over the last couple of years of like, can Jason Tatum and Jalen like play together? Like, do they need to separate them? And I forget who I was listening to. It was probably an ESPN guy, but it was like, guess what? They finally just I think it was JJ Redick actually on his podcast. He's like, the Celtics finally like realize as a team that Jason Tatum is the 1, Jaylen Brown is the 2. And there's no hard feelings. Like, Jaylen Brown doesn't feel like attacked or that he needs to be traded. And I think, JJ Redick was actually interviewing Jason Tatum for this. And he asked me, he's like, so did you guys ever talk about this? Or was it kind of just subconsciously or like subtly kind of realized as a team? Right. I was like, no, we like obviously it started that way. It wasn't just one day Jason Tatum came in saying I'm the 1. That wasn't how it worked. But like they did talk about it.
Yeah. All those player only meetings paid off, I guess.
Yeah. Like, and I think I just really don't think they have to do much. Maybe you do something like the trade deadline, or like maybe try to shift something around kind of to get like I don't know, something outside of your starting five situated, but I think they're in a good position. It's just really funny, like looking back when I forget if it was last year, 2 years ago, where they're like, they really extended Marcus Smart. Like
Right.
he's not a starting guard in this league. Like he's a nice like 6-man off the bench. And is he the best point guard? No, but is he the best defensive? I was going to say point guard, but best defensive player? Like,
yeah.
Rob Williams, we extended.
Here's the thing about Marcus Smart, quick to jump in.
Yeah.
It turns out maybe he was better off given the keys of the point guard position, because when he was thrust into this hybrid, you're not the point guard, so be something else, is when he really got into trouble shooting too much, right? And he still has his moments where he gets a little too trigger happy with his jumper.
Totally.
But when he became the actual full-time point guard, it's almost like he realized what his goals were, and it was not to get up all these shots and do all this stuff. It was to do everything else, which is where
it's our 2 stars be stars.
Exactly. Which, again, he has his moments where he doesn't, but where the Celtics need to get better is in the margins, right? Like I'm looking through the free agency list right now, and this isn't the guy for them.
Great.
Probably it's not great, but again, it's in the margins, right? This guy probably won't even be a starter because it's going to be Smart, White, Brown, Tatum. No, it won't, right? Who's White's off the bench? Yeah, so Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford, Rob Williams, like DeLon Wright, right? Just like a guy who can do a little something as a point guard. He can come in and play the defense you want. Like he's not going to be overly expensive. That's the type of player that they need to find to fill those margins up. Because
you're deep on the free agent big board, Pete. Well, I guess there's not much out there.
Down. He's not that far down the list. But also, I do think one more wing defender, and just 3-and-D is used to death. But if Neesmith can actually be playable, if they can find another guy who can come in and just spell Jalen and Jason for a little while,
it's a little bit tough with what are. Like, it is interesting. I don't know if you and I was talking about with some people about how the Warriors, it's gone a little bit off tangent. Like people like, oh, like a super team didn't win, but at the end of the day, the Warriors have like the highest payroll in the league. And like, it is interesting how some teams are willing to go to certain extents with their salary, with their payroll. But like knowing the Celtics, like where they are right now is like, they're not going to like, since they're bringing back everyone, like they're not going to want to start paying people. So then you have to worry like, oh, who are they getting rid of? Like looking at like Derek White's getting 16 a year. Like that's the 4th highest on our team. So like
ain't cheap. It ain't a cheap team,
like for what he does, like I really like him, but I would like him at like half the price.
Right.
So
like
I don't know. How, like
strong 11 feels right for Derek White. Not a strong.
Yeah. Like Tice left the Celtics to actually get paid, and then we traded for him back, and like that's the contract we didn't want to get him. It's like $9 million a year, but like I do love, since we are talking contracts a little bit, Robert Williams, similar to Marcus Smart, when we gave him an extension last year, because he really didn't. He had flashes, but until this past year, he wasn't consistently healthy, wasn't consistently playing, and like he didn't have like a real role carved out. And we gave him like 4 years, $50 million, I think. And like everyone was like, "You're giving him an extension?" Like, because it was like a year early too, compared to when most rookies get their deal. And everyone was like, "What are they doing? This is so risky." And now it's like Robert Williams for 10 to 12 million a year for the next 4 years. Golly, sign me up for another one. Like
one of the better contracts around town.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I don't know where they're going to go, because there's really not. You look at this list, it's ugly, man. Like Jeremy Lamb, TJ Warren, like Taurean Prince, like those are some of the wings that are available right now. Like that's not looking too hot for y'all. We'll see where they go. Do they make a trade? Is it just a mid-level exception move? I'm not really sure.
Taurean Prince, I like that one actually.
I
feel like he's a poor man Jay Crowder.
Yeah, not as good.
I love Jay Crowder when he was on the Celtics.
Right. And his shooting can get annoying too. Like he just lets it fly sometimes. And if it's not hitting, it's frustrating, but he does a lot of things that you like on a basketball court.
Do you know what a rebound is? Because he can explain to you what a rebound is.
That clip will come up forever. I love that Taurean Prince clip. Other free agent stuff, just more big picture. Any of these big names truly going to get moved? Kyrie just opted in. Harden's probably going to stay in Philly. Bradley Beal is opting out, but likely to opt to get a longer, bigger contract. Like, are any of these really big names, Glenn, going to actually make a move here?
I'm always the type to say
quiet.
no. And I was like, no way this Ben Simmons Harden thing's actually going to happen. I'm pretty sure you and I were talking last year and you're like, Harden to like Philly, or like maybe it was Harden to going to the Nets, whatever. We were talking about Harden getting traded at one of the points in time. And I was like, dude, like big name players, like this is never going to actually happen. It's just like all talk. And then it did. So anything's possible. I really don't feel like anything will be.
This is going to be a whack free agent class. It's kind of whack.
I know like this isn't even that hot of a take, but like there is talks like that Ayton might be back, but I feel like they'll end up just signing and trading him.
Yeah. Well, who knows how much that bridge has been burned, right? That's the question. Is he going to even give a sign and trade, or is he just going to get the biggest offer sheet he can and fuck the Suns?
Yeah.
Right? Like, because the Suns might lose him for nothing, and that would be really rough for them. Yeah. You know, the Suns window. We're talking about the windows for all these teams, Glenn. Like the Suns window was last year, perhaps. You can argue that they're going to be coming in now as the fourth best team in the West. Like that's real. That's actual possibility there. So I don't know what the heck's going on. There's a chance that Brunson is the biggest free agent landing of the whole, which is just wrong. That shouldn't be.
It will be a little bit interesting in the point guard space too. Colin Sexton.
Yes.
Because it seemed like he was kind of on his way out, with the Cavs being a little bit more committed to Darius Garland. That's I think
a lot more committed.
What they expected or was hoping Colin Sexton to be, and then they didn't like re-sign him or give him an extension earlier in the season when they could have, and then he got injured. I forget what his injury was, but it was like done for the season. Like, I know it doesn't happen as much in the NBA as it does in the NFL, but like, I wouldn't be shocked if maybe he returns on like a 1-year deal or something to Cleveland to kind of like have a prove-it year, be healthy, coming back from his injury, and then hopefully getting the bag somewhere. But
right, yeah, I don't know, man.
It's a good player.
It's ugly. It's ugly, and there's not a lot of room for a lot of teams right now. So we'll see.
Is that someone that if hypothetically, let's say Brunson doesn't end up on the Knicks, is like Sexton someone you have any interest in?
Not really, honestly. There was a lot of talks about Sexton to the Knicks. It's not the type of guy I want on my team, especially next to RJ Barrett, right? Like, and when you talk about draft, I'm not talking about fit ever, but when you're talking about free agency and paying somebody, it's when you talk about fit. I don't think he's the right type of guard. I just don't. I think he's a scoring guard who's decent.
He does grind on defense, though.
He does. I just like every time I watched them, I thought Darius Garland outshined him so much offensively that it maybe has a bad taste in my mouth. But I would be good on Colin Sexton just because of what he would have gotten paid. Now, granted, we're talking about getting him on 10, 12 million. Then I think it's a really worthy flyer to take. That's low risk, but not itching to get Colin Sexton into town. I was just going to bring up one more guard that I just now lost here.
Zach Levine? Like, I don't see him leaving.
Yeah, I don't see Zach Levine leaving either.
But he is.
This is it. I think this just came in 9 minutes ago. Rockets will process a buyout with John Wall, agreeing to pay $41 million of the 47.
They were talking about that earlier today.
The Clippers are looking to be the leader to grab him at a 6.3 mid-level exception. Kind of a nice get. I think Wall has something to give. I think John Wall is going to play for somebody decent this year and actually have an impact.
It's hard to say. We haven't seen him play in so long.
Years.
Literally, yeah.
The big one too, though, this is why we haven't gotten to him, because he doesn't really fit onto the Celtics timeline. The Knicks don't really have what it takes, I think, to grab him from Charlotte, but Miles Bridges will be sought after here. And the Hornets have to make a big decision.
Good for him for not taking that contract last year.
Dude, and he was awesome last year. He was so freaking good. I know the Hornets were a little bit disappointing. I think there are going to be a lot of suitors out there for Miles Bridges.
I kept thinking he was going to cool off too, because my buddy had him in fantasy, and like at the beginning, I was like, this is not sustainable for the whole season, and relatively was.
He helped win my league. I mean, I had Jokic, so that was pretty sick. But like Miles Bridges was huge for me too. I think there's somebody out there is going to try to get him. If it ends up being a sign and trade, that's a win for Charlotte. But I think otherwise, Charlotte's going to end up having to match a max offer sheet. And that's going to be tough for them with LaMelo getting paid soon. And who they can't get anybody in Charlotte. Why would you not just max out Miles?
And they gave Hayward a 4-year deal. What was this, the second year of it? So
yeah, I don't know, man.
Remember, everyone was a little bit surprised that Hayward got like as much as he did,
and we're like, Charlotte
Hayward has 2 years left
because Charlotte can't get anyone. They got to get Gordon Hayward. When they have Gordon Hayward and he's healthy, they're a good team.
Honestly, I'm just looking now on Basketball Reference. Hayward's deal ends when LaMelo's rookie deal ends. So
big receipt coming in Charlotte at some point here. I don't know. Other guys who are like available kind of is like Kyle Anderson. Like that's what we're talking to. Nurkic is technically.
I like Kyle Anderson. He does a little bit of everything.
He'd be good for the Celtics, I think.
Yeah.
But what's he going to get?
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets more than you and I suspect.
Right. He can get
50. Even if it's only like a 2-year deal or something.
Oh man. What a stressful time.
That's like a classic. Like I talk about this with different people all the time. Okay. Not really. That made it seem like I talk about the Memphis Grizzlies salary cap way too often, but like in relation to what I mentioned about the Warriors is like, they decided to pay all their guys. And like, that's why they are the highest like payroll in the league by like a decent amount. Like the Grizzlies, though, are just one of those teams that aren't going to do that. And like Kyle Anderson is going to be the guy that they will low key miss. They have a lot of good role players that contributed to the winning basketball, which is not always the case. It's not always the case that you can just have a bunch of role players and actually win. Obviously, you have a star in Ja, but like they traded D'Anthony Melton to the 76ers. Like they will see if they get Kyle Anderson back. So
important pieces over the course of the year. 100%.
Totally.
So, man, we'll see. I don't know if I got anything else. I think that's all I got for now.
One thing I did think about too when you mentioned John Wall is what did you say? He was probably going to get signed for a couple $1 million or something for the Clippers. Yeah. Think about how much the Lakers wish that was the case with Russ. That they got Russ from the Rockets on a buyout for like $6 million, and some other bottom of the barrel team was paying $40 million. That's what they wish they were in.
And now they ain't even getting Kyrie. So I don't know what's going on in Los Angeles, man. They'll get their share of vet minimum guys like they always would because they have LeBron. But in general, man, it's going to be tough for them to get better. I don't see the case. I really don't. I don't know what's going to go down here between now and then. I know Rudy Gobert is always talked about as a trade piece. Donovan Mitchell will hear about. Levine will hear about, amongst some others. But it's going to be a weird free agency this year, Glenn.
Yeah, I do think in the right situation, Mo Bamba's a free agent. I don't think he's going to get a huge contract, and it doesn't seem like he kind of fits into what that Orlando Magic are trying to do going forward. So I think, I don't know, it wouldn't be horrible player for the Knicks if they need a center to replace Mitch. Wouldn't be horrible for the Suns if you just need, again, he's a guy who I think is a starting center, but like, you end up playing small ball, so he only plays like 18 to 20 minutes a game. So like, I think on those teams that have a hole at center, he's a guy that can get you 2-3 blocks a game and can stretch the floor. He doesn't get a ton of rebounds, but like if you have other guys that can do that, like
so let's end on this here. If you're the Phoenix Suns, I know I mentioned before about the max for Ayton, right? Would you take Ayton at the max with probably being able? Let's say they can bring back JaVale McGee at the vet minimum, right? Would you take Ayton on the max at the vet minimum, or Mo Bamba and JaVale McGee at 10 and 6? Like the two cheaper options,
JaVale
not as good as Ayton, but then have flexibility in other positions.
JaVale and Mo.
You'd go for JaVale and Mo. I think I agree.
I'm just big into not overpaying centers. Obviously, there's few exceptions, which we certainly can name 2 that finished in the top 2 of the MVP race. But yeah, for the most part, like, I don't think centers typically contribute to like all-star or not all-star, like finals basketball.
Yeah, you need one, but you don't need the one, if that makes sense.
Like, think about it. If the Suns have JaVale McGee as a starter next year, is that the end of the world? Like, they still will finish like probably top 3 seed?
If he's playing 18 minutes a game, you're doing great.
Yeah.
if him and Mo can just get 15 to 20 each, we're doing good. We're in a good place.
And they have what's his name coming back from injury, the Serbian guy.
Saric. Yeah.
Yeah, Dario Saric. So like
about him.
He can play small ball center too, even though he's like a forward.
Yeah.
So I just don't think the Suns need to bring back Ayton on a max deal.
I agree. And we shall see what happens. Glenn, this has been a great episode. Talk some draft, talk some free agency. I can't wait to see what the Knicks do, because if it's just Brunson, I'm telling you right now, Knicks fans are going to lose their minds. And I think that's fair. I thought it was unfair to lose your mind post-draft because it's very much an incomplete. It's not a grade. It's not an A. It's not a D. It's incomplete. We do not know yet what this team is going to look like. And I'm just telling you, if it's just Brunson and a bunch of nobodies, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
It's not the free agent year for that, though.
No, it is not. We might get the best free agent and feel terrible about it.
Yeah.
All right, though. Glenn, thank you as always. Glynn Johnson, appreciate your time
me.
And your insight. This has been another episode of Subway Sports Talk. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts app, and drop a rating on Spotify if that's where you listen. And don't forget now on YouTube, if you're watching us talk about this, hit the notifications button, subscribe, leave a comment. Leaving a little comment on a YouTube really does a huge, huge deal for us with getting these videos in front of more people. And that's the goal, right? We're trying to talk sports here, have a good time, build something. And what helps build that is that more people seeing it and listening to it. So that's all I got. Glenn, thank you, bro.
Cheers.
Cheers. There we go.